Welcome to Emerson News, your reliable source for breaking news, in-depth analysis, and the latest developments across South Africa. We deliver accurate, timely, and impactful stories that keep you informed and ahead. Follow our page, subscribe to our channel, and like our videos for more updates. Stay connected, stay informed.
Because they were saying that there's a shortfall in terms of the revenue. Now, hardly 12 months later, there's still no new revenue stream, but the budget is able to be tabled. So we're asking ourselves a question to say, what then warranted that they increased the VAT last year, whereas this year they did not do anything in terms of new revenue? The second issue is that because it's an election year, the minister will always be very cautious in terms of what to do, but immediately after people have voted, like last year, people voted in 2024. In 2025, February, they wanted to increase VAT. So we preempt the same thing is going to happen, that next year they are going to want to increase taxes in one way or the other. Lastly, is that our problems as a country are structural, whether it is unemployment, it is poverty, etc. Now the inflation increase in terms of grants increasing by 80 rands, increasing budget there by inflation, does nothing to solve the structural problems of the country. And if you check the posture of the budget delivered today, it has been largely the same for the past 10 years, and it is not working. Hence, unemployment is increasing, poverty is increasing. We've gotten even problems whereby there's malnutrition, whereby even people are even committing suicide in our country because of the challenges they are facing. But the budget does not deal with the fundamentals. It is just a continuation of what has been happening for the past couple of years.
A continuation of what has been said. Simply put, it's a regurgitation in your view. I'm also interested in finding out what should the minister have said that would have pleased the political landscape and climate in the country.
Firstly, when it comes to creating jobs, you have a budget of 2.6 trillion. Over 80% of it goes to big white businesses. Black businesses, SMMEs, only get a fraction of that 2.6 trillion budget that has been tabled today. If the minister had said that there's going to be a set allocation that is set aside for SMMEs, particularly black businesses, would have been happy as a party. Secondly, the setting aside of certain tenders, contracts. Let's say a contract that is 10 million and below gets to be set aside for SMMEs, to avoid the case whereby companies like Bidvest, which is such a big company, will be contesting for tenders worth 1.5 million with SMMEs. For us, it is regressing. Lastly, the issue of the PIC. The PIC is managing assets worth over 3.8 trillion. And out of those assets worth over 3.8 trillion, less than 200 billion is actually invested in majority black-owned companies. And you ask yourself a question, how then do you want as government to transform the economy, get rid of inequality, but out of 3.8 trillion, you only allocate less than 200 billion to black majority-owned companies? It shows that they lack the political will. So in our view, what the minister should have done today was, yes, to deal with the everyday problems, the daily problems that we face, but at the same time, attempt to deal with the structural problems of the country. Because I can assure you, the problems that have been persisting are still going to persist. For example, look at local government. He says that municipalities are in financial distress. However, he does say in the same sentence that financial distress, it is a result of those municipalities are not receiving clean audits. But he says nothing about holding accountable those municipal officials that are the cause of the financial distress that leads to services not being delivered to the people. So it was a safe budget for him because he does not want to upset either the voters and at the same time the funders of the ANC and the corrupt elements working together with the ANC, because the water mafias are working with the ANC, the corrupt municipal managers, ANC people. So maybe that is why he was afraid of going after the culprits that are inhibiting local government from providing services to the people.
Thank you for your input. That's the word from the ATM's Vuyile Zungula.
infrastructure development?
Firstly, we're of the view that there must be no department that will receive budget cuts. In the climate that we're in, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to really creating a conducive environment for the economy to grow and protect the livelihoods of South African workers, there must be no budget cuts. Secondly, we want to really emphasize the issue that we need to deal decisively with the issues pertaining to inequality and unemployment. And critical to that, there is an entity under this particular department that is not utilized, which is the PIC, because the PIC is managing over 3.8 trillion in terms of assets. However, less than 200 million is invested in black businesses. That is a big problem, and over 95% of the amounts or the assets that are in the hands of the PIC are not invested in production-driven initiatives. So meaning they are not creating jobs in the process. And we've got a challenge with the PIC because, once you have a PIC that is funded by black workers, because 92% of the PIC assets is coming from black workers, 5% is coming from UIF, which is again black workers. However, if you look at it, if 3.8 trillion of assets but less than 200 billion is invested in black businesses, it is a problem. We had an issue here last year with the portfolio committee when we dealt with some of the issues pertaining to the PIC, where you've got a company called Levoca received funding from the PIC worth about 700 million, and it has already started making money for the PIC. Every year it was generating over 100 million that will be made by the PIC. But however, the PIC sees those shares in a manner that, in our view, it is showing the disdain that the PIC has on black businesses, because if over 3.8 trillion assets that they have, but only less than 200 billion is funded on black businesses, and then the very few companies that are funded by the PIC, you have the PIC fund seizing those shares over issues that they could rectify, because we've got a challenge of poor black participation in terms of the economy. Therefore, the PIC must step in terms of really encouraging and ensuring that it is funding black businesses and supporting black businesses.
Last question. Commissioner is leaving end of March. Expected new commissioner 1st of April. Maybe summarize and reflect on his legacy.
Look, for me, when it comes to SARS, very important institution. However, I am not pleased with SARS. Firstly, we've got a crisis of illicit financial flows, which are pointed to be in excess of 62 billion US dollars. Money that is being, taken out of our economy, meaning there's no benefit that is accrued to South Africans. Yet, these illicit financial flows are largely in the mining sector, meaning our own resources, when it comes to illicit financial flows, are not benefiting South African citizens. SARS is not doing anything in respect of that, and this old commissioner did not address that problem. We've got an issue here of foreigners coming from China, coming from Asia, coming from Pakistan. On one front, they are running very profitable businesses, multi-billion dollar sectors like your hardware shops, your Chinese malls. However, they're not paying taxes. It is you and me, law-abiding citizens, that need to pay taxes. However, someone from China can come, open a shop in one of the China malls, make billions in South Africa, use our police services, use our hospitals, use our schools, use our roads that are paid for by me and you, but that person pays no taxes. Again, you've going to have the new phenomenon of digital nomads. People coming from Europe, from America, come, especially here in Cape Town, they work here, they make our lives much worse in terms of this part of our country, because if you go to Waterfront and some of these places, even restaurants are not pricing for a South African. They are pricing for a European that can afford to pay in pounds, or an American that can afford to pay in dollars. However, SARS is not dealing or not doing anything to tax those so-called digital nomads, yet they are making use of our services and infrastructure in our country. So my view would be the next commissioner, if they can deal with the issue of illicit financial flows, also deal with taxing of all of the foreigners, whether they are running spazas, they are running hardwares, they are running all of these China malls or factories in Newcastle, they must be taxed just like me and you law-abiding citizens are taxed.
Vio Zungula, let me thank you. Thank you so much for your time.